we come to order, please? First order of business is approval of the agenda. There was an agenda circulated. The mayor would like to add an item for under new business for procedural discussion only. Treatment of the driveway application for 10913 Kenilworth. Do I hear a motion to amend the agenda for the addition of that item?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Anyone opposed? Very well. So I will entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Very well. Then the first item on that adopted agenda is adoption of the consent agenda. It consists of one item, approval of the November 10, 2025 Town Council meeting minutes. Do I hear a motion to adopt the consent, to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
That brings us to the presentation of the FY 2025 financial audit results. And we have attending virtually Frank Rosega of Zelenkowski Axelrod.
Yep.
I didn't
Hello.
pronounce any of that correctly.
Yep, that's you got it right. We just go by ZA for short, so but you did a good job there.
Thank you for joining us.
Uh-huh.
Preliminary?
No, I just wanted to note that this was the first audit we've gone through with Zelenkowski Axelrod, and everything went very, very smoothly. And I want to extend my thanks to Mr. Prosega for his leadership on the audit.
Thank you, and it went really smoothly on our end as well. So we're happy to be here and be of service.
So if you, the audit October 30, dated October 30 has been circulated to the council. Would you care to summarize it for our benefit?
Sure. I'm going to share my screen here. And so here's our we have a presentation here. And I'm going to first just sort of go over a little sorry. First, I'm going to just go over the overview and the results of our audit, and then go into some required communications, and then talk about the financial statements at a high level, sort of focusing on just sort of any somewhat significant changes from the prior year, although there weren't many, and then open it up for any questions. But feel free to stop me at any point if you have any questions as I'm going. And also, I apologize. I plan to be there in person tonight, but feeling a little under the weather, so I figured it would be a better, the Zoom option would be a little better to, not spread any germs. So first, here's my contact information, email and cell phone. If anyone has any questions after the meeting, feel free to contact me. And moving into the results of our audit. So we issued our audit of the June 30th, 2025 financial statements was performed in accordance with U.S. GAAP, or generally accepted auditing standards, and we expressed an unmodified opinion, which is what you want, on October 30th, 2025, which states that the financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects in accordance with U.S. GAAP, or generally accepted accounting principles. Continuing on with the results of our audit, we did not come across any instances of fraud during the audit. We also didn't have any, we didn't note any material weaknesses in internal controls, so everything's functioning appropriately. and we received full cooperation from management. So Barbara and Mary did a great job of getting us everything that we needed in a very timely manner. So we really appreciate that. Next section is the other required communications section. So these communications are summarized in our governance letter, which was also dated October 30th, 2025. And these are just required by the auditing standards that we communicate to those charged with governance, which is the town, which is the mayor and town council. So we encountered no difficulties during the audit. There were no disagreements with management. We received a management representation letter, which is just a requirement of the auditing standards. Um, and we aren't aware of any consultations with other accountants on any matters that came up during the audit. Um, there was one audit adjustment that was recorded related to ARPA funds being expended during the year. Um, More of a sort of just a bookkeeping entry. I think the previous auditors had also booked the same adjustment. So, next page, there were no significant unusual transactions were noted, and significant risks identified were management override of internal controls and improper revenue recognition. So these two risks are present in just about every single financial statement audit. So it's just saying that we as auditors are required to design procedures to address these risks. Um, there's nothing that management can do to um, not have these risks are always present. It's just more of a something that we as auditors are required to address. Um, any questions there?
No, those are items for which you look and did not find evidence of. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. Exactly. Um, so I'm going to move into the financial statements now. Um, so um, pages 1 through 3 of the financial statements. This is our auditor's report. So as I mentioned before, we issued an unmodified opinion, which is noted, right here. Um, and then the report goes on to talk about management's responsibilities for the financial statements and also the auditor's responsibilities for the financial statements. It's all very standard stuff. Probably looks exactly the same as it did in the prior year, so nothing new there. Page 4, we'll start the management discussion and analysis, or MD&A, which just highlights some of the more significant events that occurred during the year that management wanted to call out. So um, then the basic financial statements start on page 11. So here's the um, government-wide statement of net position. One of the more significant items here is the decrease in unearned revenue. So this is just a result of the ARPA funds, the additional expenditure of the ARPA funds, which is also noted in the MD&A. So it's to be expected, but a fairly large decrease there, about $473,000 compared to the prior year. Um, and then one other item to note here is the compensated absence accrual right here's it increased by about $43,000 from the prior year. So we'll talk about that more when I get to the footnotes, but not overall, it's not a huge number for the financial statements, but a relatively large increase from the prior year. Um, the fund level financial statements start here on page 13. So there's the fund level balance sheet. Um, Overall, things look pretty, no surprises here. I will point out that unassigned fund balance increased by about $247,000 from last year, which is always a good thing to have your unassigned fund balance increase. Um, Footnotes start on page 17. Um, so overall, everything here looks pretty consistent with the prior year. I did want to point out one thing here, which is the adoption of GASB 101. So page 22, um, oops, I skipped ahead of myself. So page 22, here is the compensated absences footnote, as I had mentioned before. Down on page um, on page 20, um, I'm sorry, this is page 20. 22, I apologize. Um, it just notes in the footnote that the compensated absences, GASB 101 was adopted during the year. And that footnote is right here. This is the policy footnote for that. So um, the big change resulting from GASB 101 is the accrual for sick leave. So the town has always accrued for vacation pay, which is paid out to employees if they happen to leave or terminated. However, sick leave is not paid out to employees. So under previous accounting guidance, no accrual for sick leave was made. However, um, because the new Gatsby statement indicates that leave should be accrued if it accumulates and is more likely than not will be paid out in cash or settled through non-cash means. Um, Sick leave would be considered to be settled through non-cash means as it's not paid out, but people can still use it if they need it. So that um, that sick leave represents this larger addition to the compensated absences number this year. So overall, not a huge number for the financial statements, but because it is a new accounting statement, just wanted to call that out. So here's a roll forward of the compensated absences accrual from the prior year to the current year. Um, Moving on, page 29. The financial statements. This is just the required supplementary information of the budget to actual um, statement, and just want to point out that you'll see here we add some explanations of differences between the actual and the budgetary basis um, of accounting. So this isn't required, but it's strongly encouraged by the state to include this if there's any different, if there's only just variances in the way um, the actual fund level financial statements are compared to the budget. And so there's just a handful of differences. Nothing major, but just something to point out as it is looks a little different than it has in the past. Um, so that's really all I have planned to talk about. Does anyone have any questions on anything I went over or anything that I might have not gone over?
On page 11,
Mhm.
you indicated there'd been a large decrease in unearned revenue.
Yeah.
Are grants considered unearned revenue?
Yeah. So, not all grants are, but the ARPA funds are because essentially you receive the money in advance. So before you receive it before you actually spend any of it. So when you first receive it, it all hits this unearned revenue line, and it sits there and gets recognized to revenue as you expend the funds. Um, so that's the difference. I mean, that is the reason for that decrease is specifically the ARPA grants. Some grants are just cost reimbursement where you don't get anything until you incur the costs, then you submit the cost to whoever the funder is. And in that case, it won't hit this unearned revenue line. It'll just hit essentially you'll have a revenue and an expense. Um, amount that is equal. So you're receiving the revenue as you spend the funds. But in this case, in particular, the ARPA grant is, that's essentially the reason for this unearned revenue decrease.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a question? This may be a question for Barbara. What is our debt service paying?
I probably need to confirm that with Mary. I thought she would be joining us tonight, but apparently something came up. I believe it is essentially, it's really not a debt service payment, and also in that line item, I believe is where Mary books the payment that we make to the county for processing our property tax bills.
Thank you. That would be all I have. And anyone else? We have a couple of folks in the audience, including ex-member of the council, who must be feeling very nostalgic at the moment. Yeah, the annual audit is always exciting.
Mhm.
Are there any questions from the audience? All right, well, thank you then, Mr. Pasega, for your time this evening.
Mhm.
Thanks, Frank.
Yep, my pleasure, and thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank
Hope you feel better. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Have a good evening.
And thanks, Barb and Harry, for this little smooth audit process.
Oh, you're
Yeah,
welcome.
definitely a big thank
No
you.
small feat.
It's a lot to keep track of.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye, Frank.
Bye.
All right, we are at the point on the agenda where we are open to presentations by residents. Are there any presentations? Yes, Tony.
Hi, I'm Tony Altar. I live at 11100 Kenilworth Avenue. And I'm really coming here in a very agnostic mode about the leaf blowing issue. And really, I'm here more to talk about a broader issue. And that is how to just deal with issues that come up. And as Chris mentioned, I've been on the council twice. I was the one that proposed and we got the 20-mile-per-hour speed limit initiated here. Barb, I don't know if you can put that on full screen, the little square on the bottom.
We also have full-size printouts.
Yeah, you guys, I'm glad you have this. Thank you. Barbara was very helpful in this whole process, by the way. So basically, maybe it's not so visible on the screen, but basically what you see on the screen is sort of green and I might do this in general. You know, green means a good thing. Red is maybe not so good. Yellow, uncertain. White, just not really much of an issue, I guess. And if you're looking at I don't know how many of you, if any of you want a copy of the spreadsheet, or do you have it there in front of you?
I got it.
Okay, that's great. So basically, what I've noticed, by the way, from the previous meeting, and there's a lot of solicitations, which I'm holding up here. This is from citizens. And one of them, I think it was listed as anonymous, but I wrote one of them. And even the one I wrote is just addressing a part of the issue about leaf blowers. Very biased view. I just happened to feel that way on the moment I wrote it. I believe it. But the point is there are many other issues. So what I really would encourage the town council to do is use the template. I think I also included with the Excel, there's a blank version of what's on there. And I think we now, in the age of information, can't be just shooting from the hip based upon what the consensus of even the town might be on an issue. We need to look at all of the ramifications and the unintended consequences, which is something I think by human nature we tend to ignore. Gee, what happens that we didn't want to happen as a result of this action? And so I tried to capture as many of those facets on the sheet as possible, which really broke down to noise, environmental concern, cost, and the environment. And I think that pretty much captured it. In fact, I hadn't even seen these comments from the citizens. I read it this morning, and I really captured most on this spreadsheet of what people are talking about. So if you really want to, you could go back on the spreadsheet. And in fact, I did it on another version. There weren't many things to add, but there are a few more things that it stimulated me to think about, like the cost. And so I think it behooves the council to now move into the information age in a very concise way. The feedback is great, but if you can reduce all this information on a one-page summary, maybe that's telling us something. This is something we could use for other issues. And that way, when the council makes a decision, you have the evidence in front of you. When people question you, you say, yeah, we looked at that, we weighted all of these things. Citizens can recommend other facets to recommend, like hearing, the effect on people's hearing that I didn't think of so much, but and the decibels, for example. Sure, gas-powered leaf blowers are louder, but they're much faster. So if you add up the noise over time, that's a different dimension to think about. So all of that's contained on that one page. And that's really all I wanted to say today. I hope the council uses this kind of instrument maybe to evaluate the leaf blowing issue. I also noticed from the citizens' feedback, it's pretty 50-50. Some want it banned, some don't. And I think there's reasons and there's ways to look at this and weight the different facets to come up with maybe a better decision. So that's really all I had to say today. I hope you find this a useful tool for any other issue that comes up. And I think it's a good form of protection for the council as well to show that you've done your due diligence across all dimensions that you could imagine.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Shows a lot of work.
It really wasn't too much work because once you get it all laid out, you can just pretty quickly go through all of this. And it maybe took me an hour and a half, 2 hours altogether.
Well, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes,
I'm Donna Calajon. I live at 11314 Kenilworth Avenue, but I am here tonight representing the Garrett Park Swimming Pool Association, on whose board I serve as president. The GPSPA, as I think all of you know, is the nonprofit that actually runs the pool. Thanks for giving me a chance to address some thoughts to you prior to you taking up the beginnings of the lease conversations at the town council level later in this meeting. I think, as you all know, because you are all members of the pool, I realized, this asset is a unique and important hub of community activity from late May until mid-September. I believe that if some members had their way, they would want us to put a bubble on top of it and have us run it full year round, just like Georgetown Prep with pool, volleyball, events, adult parties, and everything else that goes with it. But I'm sure I digress a little bit here. Since a few of you are newish to town, or at least a couple of you, I wanted to share a small bit about the pool and its relationship to the town. And I apologize to those of you who probably know this history as well, if not better than I do. But I did do some fact checking today. The first pool, which we call the play pool, with the one with the diving well, was built in the early mid-50s by residents of the town. Who went door to door and raised the money to do this. Jim Wilson, who lives on the corner of Strathmore and Kenilworth, was there the day the pool opened in 1954. The baby pool was built second a few years later, and then the lap pool was constructed in the early 1960s, opening in 1964, largely to address a problem that we have today. The waiting list was full. Barbara Jackson, who lives on Montrose, who I'm sure all of you know, was on the swim team in the 1960s, worked at the pool, and has served multiple tours of duty on the board. A little known fact, well, at least two of you know this, I know, and Barb, but the Garrett Park Swimming Pool Association purchased what is now the dog park from the railroad for a very small amount of money. I think it was $1,000. And functionally swapped that property with the town for the other part of what is now the pool, so that the lap pool could be built, but more importantly, so that the town owned that property and the county could not build a bridge across the railroad to Strathmore for traffic. So it's a very interesting symbiotic history that goes very far back. The Rutgay family, who live on Cambria, a couple doors down from Phil, managed the pool when I arrived in town in 1997, and it was a family affair. Sean was a manager. Tom did a lot of the maintenance. The girls were lifeguards. Sean was the pool manager. And all of that volunteering continues today because Tom still does work for us during the season when something needs to be done. The signs that you see at the pool were all made by him. And Mary just retired, as many of you know, from being our bookkeeper. Hundreds of Garrett Park kids had their first job at the pool, and the feeling of ownership extends to today. A couple of years ago, we had a huge branch come down on the volleyball court at the pool. And I went over to check it out and to arrange for a professional company to come and, take it apart. And there was TJ Carlin, the former manager from the 90s aughts, with his chainsaw, ready to be put into service. So I had to kick him out because my lawyer over here worries about liability. But it's a good indicator. Running the pool was a pretty low-key but hands-on, truly community-based affair until about 2010 or 2011, when a force of nature known as Jean Horan joined the board. Her work to professionalize the organization, its systems, processes, financial management, is really now stuff of legend in the pool archives. And via her leadership, the organization tightened its controls, began to set aside reserves, and this culminated in the first major renovation in 50 years, updating the bathhouse in 2022. And I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Councilmember Schultz for his support over all these many years as well. Our current board of directors is made up of old timers, mid timers, and new timers. This last group, I just want to say something about this last group, what I call the new timers, some of whom are becoming mid timers. They've brought a tremendous amount of energy to the pool board and to the pool. And for those of you who have been there in the last couple of years, you've just seen the family activity, and a lot of it centers around the volleyball court, but it's much, much more than that. And they have brought energy, creativity, and our surveys of our members, one of which we just conducted, show that they really value the smaller enhancements and increased number of board and member-led events. Garrett Park residents can jump the waiting list. Just want to make sure everybody's aware of that, as can the estates, are never turned away. Kids sleep out the night before the opening day to earn bragging rights. 4th of July is a blur of fun and laughter that's open to everybody, all the neighbors. And this year saw the return of the crab feast, which was an unquestionable success. I share all this really as a backdrop to ask you, as you take up the subject of the lease, you consider the 70+ year history that has seen the town and pool leadership working hand in glove to ensure that this jewel in our community stays strong. More than 50% of town residents are members of the pool. That number keeps rising as homes turn over in Garrett Park. In 2002, Bob Flanders of Claremont Avenue, then board president and a lifelong volunteer, published the following note in the Bugle in May. Pool takes seriously its obligation to serve the community. We are proud of the long-term collaborative relationship with the town and the important role the pool plays in the social fabric of our community. Garrett Park was the first community pool built in Montgomery County. Over the years, the pool has played a key role. Many a friendship has been formed there. The pool serves as a great mixer for adults as well as for children from different schools meeting over the summer. The swim team provides a healthy summer focus for both kids and parents. Many have their first job experience working at the pool. The 4th of July fun at the pool rounds out the town's traditional Independence Day celebration. And as you all know, the ending of the parade was moved next door to the pool to bring those things together. And while Penn Place may be the center of town, the pool is our summer capital. I want to thank both Mayor Keller and Town Manager Matthews for their work to get the lease on your radar. And at the same time, I want to just say I'm hopeful, Barb, with apologies to you, that your reference in the memo that we are in the early stages of discussing the lease does not portend a protracted process to get this resolved. The reality is that we approached the town more than 2 years ago to start this process. Mid 2023, not long after that branch came down during the storm. The draft term sheet that is referenced is what we believe to be near final terms, and I look forward to finalizing it as quickly as possible. I'd be happy to answer any questions now or later in the meeting when you take up. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Later in this evening's meeting, there's an agenda item to discuss elements of the lease. This is not an exercise in negotiating it here and now, but to identify chief elements and any significant factors that the council feels should be brought to bear as the lease is negotiated. All of it should be done in the context of the history that we've just heard summarized. Are there any other presentations from residents? If not, we will turn to the town manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor Keller. Included in your agenda packet is the financial report for the month of November. Just a couple highlights. As we've discussed before, the FY 2026 adopted budget assumed a prior year carryover amount of $133,500. The actual carryover amount was $159,697. Later on in your meeting agenda is, for your consideration, is the first amendment to the FY 2026 budget, and this additional revenue would be recognized as part of that ordinance. In the month of November, we received a local income tax payment in roughly in the amount of $265,000. Year to year compared to FY 2025, we are up in income tax receipts. As we've discussed on many occasions, income tax receipts have a rather unusual pattern of distribution, so it's a little too soon to tell whether or not what we're seeing will carry through the rest of the fiscal year. We'll have a better idea once we receive the payment in February, which is the next largest payment. In account 3.1, which is intergovernmental receipts from the state of Maryland, we did receive the reimbursement from the Maryland Department of General Services under the $300,000 legislative bond initiative grant. The roughly $166,000 is the amount that the town has paid to Wiedemann Architects for the design development phase services contract. That would be the base contract amount, not the change order that was approved. In account 5.4, other receipts, there are 2 payments from the local government insurance trust for claims filed by the town. One of those claims was for cleanup work associated with a fallen town tree that damaged one of our light poles on Strathmore Avenue. The other claim that was filed was for the damage to the post office ceiling, which stemmed from a water leak from the bar area of Black Market Bistro. And as we discussed previously, there was some mold in numerous areas that needed to be remediated. I would just note that the $15,000 is the extent of the town's insurance coverage for mold-related property damage. As we discussed back in, I believe it was October, the actual cost of the repair will exceed the amount of the insurance proceeds. We will be pursuing reimbursement from the restaurant through either insurance subrogation and/or direct recovery from the restaurant owners. Lastly, in terms of the financial report, I just wanted to note that back in October, you all adopted resolution number 2025-3. And with the passage of that resolution, certain town-issued permits now require the posting of a right-of-way restoration bond. During the month of November, we did receive the first posting of a right-of-way restoration bond in the amount of $3,300, and that shows up on both the expense page of the financial report as well as the reserve fund summary page of the report. Bartlett Tree Experts, who we hired to do this fall's round of tree work, has substantially completed the work that they were contracted for. That work consisted of tree removals, pruning, and stump grinding. There are a few residual items that Bartlett still has to take care of, one of which they are waiting for Pepco to de-energize a line so that a tree can be removed. As I mentioned in the financial report regarding the damage that was done to the post office ceiling, back in October, the town council awarded a contract to Royal Plus for mold remediation work as well as subsequent repair work that will be needed.
Barb, how much was that contract award,
Um,
Royal Plus?
They estimated, I'm going off memory here, Lisa, it was roughly about $20,000. That was what was based on what was visible to the eye. You all at staff's request did approve some change order authority as needed. So the amount that you'll see later in the budget amendment that's coming before you is $30,000.
And how much of that does Black Market have to be responsible for?
Our position is that the water leak emanated from their property and therefore they're responsible for all the damage that was incurred. So our attorney, we notified their attorney, our attorney notified their attorney as well as the restaurant management. I've not seen a response come through, but we weren't necessarily expecting one. It was simply to put them on notice. I would say that the restaurant did work, their director of operations, John Link, did work very closely with Mr. Miller in trying to trace down what was sort of a residual leak. And we believe we found the source of that. So Royal Plus did work this weekend, both on Saturday and Sunday. Mr. Miller, who was our maintenance supervisor, was on site both days. The work that was done over this weekend was demolishing the ceiling, as well as doing some cleaning and disinfection activities. Mr. Miller is hoping to meet with our point of contact at Royal Plus later this week. All this work is done basically on a square foot basis, so they need to sort of look at what was in the estimate that they provided us and measure that against what the work was that was actually done. So once they tee all that up and are in agreement, we're hopeful that Rural Plus will be back either this coming weekend or the weekend after that to begin the repair work. So we'll keep you updated as that kind of problem is concluded. But Mr. Miller was very pleased with the work that Royal Plus did. I did want to mention that. I also wanted to share with you all that we have resolved kind of what was an ongoing discussion with Wiedemann Architects about a particular aspect of the contract for the construction documents phase. Specifically, it had to do with what would be included in an addendum to what is known as AIA B101 document, which is a standard American Institute for Architects. So there were considerable discussion that took place between Mr. Wiedemann and the town. I'm pleased to share with you this evening that earlier today, Mr. Wiedemann stopped by and we now have a fully executed copy of the construction documents phase contract. Mr. Wiedemann estimates at this juncture, we could see the schedule slide by up to 2 months because of the delay in getting that contract language finalized. Mr. Wiedemann, as well as their subconsultants, will make every effort to make up the time where possible. So we'll keep you updated as we see kind of where things shake out. Gabby Castillo, who works for Mr. Wiedemann, you've seen her at many a meeting, was actually here this afternoon while we were setting up for tonight's council meeting, doing some measurements and some other work. So they're back hard at work.
Barb,
Mhm.
quick question that I'm just curious about, because the printed page says dispute. And we've worked with Wiedemann plenty of times. Was there anything different or notable about this particular?
Yeah, I mean, dispute makes it sound like it's a knockdown, drag out. I think there were very valid perspectives. Our attorney's assessment, which is that the standard AIA documents, obviously they are published by the American Institute for Architects. So not surprisingly, his take, and I think many attorneys would agree with Mr. Bolt, is that those documents tend to be oriented towards the benefit of the architect. Obviously, Mr. Bolt's job is to protect the town's interest. I don't think Mr. Wiedemann, he's a very reasonable person. At least based on my experience working with him, and Mr. Mayor Keller has worked with him previously on a project for Penn Place. I think there were just, I think he wanted to do right by the town, but obviously he has a business to also protect. So I think some of the terms had to do with, for example, what is the extent of the architect's standard of reasonable care? That was kind of the crux of many of the issues that needed to be discussed. So like I say, at this point, I think the parties just needed to talk it through, and it has been worked out. Lastly, just wanted to give a shout out to our maintenance team. They are continuing to remove leaves from town-owned properties. Some of you may have heard the gas-powered leaf blowers going this afternoon, as Kayla and I did, as they worked on the park. Our consulting arborist for Normandy is continuing to mark small invasive trees and shrubs for the maintenance team to tackle. They're certainly trying to do their best to address those requests, though this is a particularly heavy workload time of year for them. The team did complete this fall's town tree planting in late November. And you may recall from the budget process, particularly the more tenured members, that you had allocated funding to purchase a brine spray equipment. That equipment has arrived. So in addition to just preparing our buildings and our snowplows and things for the winter season, the team has been kind of getting up to speed with kind of testing that brine spray equipment to make sure that they're knowledgeable about its use. For those who aren't familiar with brine spray equipment or don't recall, it's a fairly widely used technology in government circles. It basically decreases the product usage, and it's also more animal friendly. So that concludes my report. Be happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Are the lights on Weymouth working now?
Waverly?
Yeah.
They are not yet. So what is happening with that, as you may recall, we are so our contractor traffic systems had been working diligently. What we found when we asked Pepco to basically power up the lights is they required us to get an electrical permit from the Montgomery County Department of Permitting Services. Traffic systems, navigating DPS is not the easiest thing, I'll just say that. They finally got a return call from someone to get some additional information. The county, in order to produce an electrical permit, said that they were looking for something referred to as a parent permit. Typically, a parent permit would mean that you have an electrical permit tied to a building permit, which obviously we're looking for an electrical permit that is not tied to a building permit. So they finally got a hold of someone, the appropriate permit technician, to basically say what was needed. I am not that familiar. I don't file for permits that often, other than Kayla does our historic area work permits, which we do quite frequently. So I did ask for some assistance from Clark Azar. Their staff filed that DPS permit request last week. So basically, we're just waiting for that permit to come through, and then it's in Pepco's hands.
Thank you.
So, any other questions? Okay, thank you very
Any
much.
projected timeline on that?
I think the permit should probably come through from DPS. I would hope fairly quickly. That's what the permit tech had indicated to traffic systems. I would never place a bet on how long it takes for Pepco to do something. So I do not. I think once we get the electrical permit in hand and send it over to our engineering contact at Pepco, I'll be in a better position to give you an anticipated timeline.
This might be an appropriate time to mention that in connection with resolving the construction document contract with Greg Wiedemann, a resident came forth in response to the solicitation that was put out earlier this year for volunteers to help. Carl Miller, professional architect in town, helped, and I'm immensely grateful for that help in going through the contract and resolving those issues. And he will stay on and help us with the construction documents as they come forward. I guess that's it, although I will just observe the mold remediation at the post office, of course, has to occur after hours on Saturday and Sunday. And I was doing my usual late arrival, and Royal Plus was just starting, and I noted with some alarm that their trucks have emblazoned on them disaster cleanup and catastrophic event remediation or recovery. And my heart sort of skipped a beat. But I had an occasion on that day and Sunday to speak with one of the chaps in charge. And although it certainly needs work, and I won't anticipate what the bottom line will be, he seemed to feel that it was not a catastrophe or disaster. And I guess that's it. Are there any other questions or observations on the town manager's report or financials? All right, we can move. Yeah, no.
Go ahead. Came and went. We're good.
Oh, okay. So we can move to unfinished business. Starting, I believe in March, again in August, and on occasion since, we've discussed the leaf blower ban, gas-powered leaf blower ban, and we solicited resident input in October and left a written comment period open until the 1st of this month. Barb and the staff have prepared a compendium of those written comments, and Barb has supplied a cover memo. Barb, do you want to summarize that?
Sure, just very briefly, I think the mayor just outlined sort of the timeline. You've had several discussions on this topic, basically focused on two alternatives. One is either maintaining the status quo, meaning that gas-powered leaf blowers could continue to be used in Garrett Park. The other is to opt into the portion of the county noise ordinance that bans the use of that equipment. Before you're committing yourself to a course of action, you did agree to get input from the community as a first step. At your October meeting, there were 9 residents who shared their thoughts on the two alternatives, and included in your agenda packet is the excerpt from the October meeting minutes, reflecting the comments of those 9 individuals who testified that night. Included in attachment 2, as the mayor noted, is the community input feedback that we received via email at the town office. And as the mayor noted, that has been kind of compiled just to remove any reference to anyone's email address. This is information you've seen before, but included in the background materials is some information from staff just about the projected startup cost if you decide to opt into the county ban. We would need to purchase we do not have any electric powered leaf blowers. We would be requesting approximately $9,000 for that purchase. And one of the comments that our maintenance team had shared with me is that the units that they've tested, which was provided by one of our local contractors, they let them kind of road test a piece of equipment, is that we only get about 45 minutes of full blowing power. So part of the reason for the $9,000 in startup cost is we would have to buy kind of multiple batteries so that they could be changed out, while they're doing certainly large areas such as, the park, Cambria Field. Mr. Miller, who is our maintenance supervisor, had asked me just to share that you could expect that they would spend more time in the field to perform the same task. He estimates probably at least 20% additional time until the technology kind of catches up for commercial use. So I think that's pretty much what's included in the background materials.
Barb, I read someplace that you had asked the attorney to give you an opinion about adopting the county's
Yeah, so
ordinance, and did you hear back from him on that?
there has been some email traffic to kind of elaborate. I don't, the town has opted into only certain sections of the county code. You'll see that if you look at our code.
Right.
So at least I think from a technical legal perspective, opting only into a portion of the noise ordinance seems, that we can do it. I think the question
Sure can't.
that we can. The question that Mr. Bolt has posed, and that's still in process, is whether or not the County Department of Environmental Protection is actually interested in only enforcing a portion of the noise ordinance. Obviously, municipalities opting only into a portion of the noise ordinance makes it more complicated for them to administer
Right.
and to, just enforce. So after talking, I talked to Councilmember Stewart's Deputy Chief of Staff last week to discuss this issue with him that had been raised. Councilmember Stewart's Chief of Staff gave us a point of contact in the county attorney's office who Mr. Bolt reached out to. Mr. Bolt did get an email today referring the matter to a different county attorney.
Right.
So that's where things stand as of today.
We don't have an answer.
We do not have a definitive
Okay,
answer.
Thank you.
The question of whether you can opt into a portion of a county chapter seems to have been resolved because there are previous examples of municipalities opting into only a portion of a county.
And the county will regulate that
Now,
portion?
that's the next question.
That's the question.
So we have the authority to do it. Will it be a hollow gesture if the county does not in fact enforce it?
Right.
So when we get to the point where later in tonight, where you determine whether or not you want to introduce an ordinance, the enforcement question could await a further month of research. I will observe that the combustible leaf blower ban has its own separate scheme of enforcement. So,
At the county level?
correct.
Okay.
So whatever objections DEP might have, they can't be based on, I would not think that they could be based upon the fact that we have opted into only a portion of the entirety of the noise control chapter.
Thank you.
My opinion. Okay, so how do we want to organize discussion of this initial step, which is simply discussion of the issues surrounding a potential ban, with particular reference to what we've heard from residents in various manners? If no one else has any thoughts, I think Tony's template is as good as any. I would add a fifth category of enforcement, which involves not only legal issues, as we've just heard, those are pending, but pragmatic ones. Okay. Noise. What are our thoughts about the views of our constituents with respect to the noise element of a potential ban? The range of comments seems fairly wide on a lot of elements, but not this one.
Yeah, and apologies for my voice, but I think you bring up a good point because a lot of there have been varied emails and contributors who have expressed opinions, and there are a number of items to consider. What is specifically on the table for us as a council to determine is the noise aspect. And so Montgomery County section 31B9 is really the question of whether or not the council should take up, make a decision to opt into that section, which is the noise control aspect specifically around banning the gas blowers. And so, although there are significant economic considerations, as Tony brought up, environmental, I think, people are very passionate around that, as they should be. Really, the question here is for us as a council, are we opting into this so that noise can be reduced? Just to kind of allow us to focus on that. Certainly, there are other aspects to consider, but that really is the central question. And I think that we have heard from, I would suspect, more folks around this topic than on any other topic, at least this year that I've been exposed to. So I think that there are a significant number of opinions. But I think that on balance, as I read through these and listened and took into account objectively, kind of the metrics that would allow us to make this decision, I would support a motion to at least have a discussion on whether or not we want to opt into the section 31B9 of the Montgomery County Code. I would be in favor of that.
Cost to the homeowner or other user, namely landscape maintenance firms who probably may or may not, but probably pass along costs to homeowners. We have a lot of what is the word I'm looking for? Indirect discussion. Do we need to do any more hard fact exploration in terms of costs, particularly pass along costs? Anecdotal, that's the word I was looking for. We have anecdotal evidence that people's monthly landscape maintenance contractor costs will rise precipitously. The one example I heard was from $80 to $320.
That sounds a little excessive.
It sounds a little excessive to me too, but it's all I've heard.
Well,
Do we need more evidence on that fact, or is it something that we can proceed on a legislative basis on the assumption that it'll work itself?
Presumably, the bulk of companies that offer these services in Garrett Park offer them in the county. So
They're gonna have to comply
they have to
anyway.
provide this, they have to comply countywide, not just in Garrett Park. So it's hard to believe that these companies would be charging Garrett Park residents more than, for changes they have to make to meet all of their other business needs.
That's a great, I think that's a great point. These, certainly the folks, George and Frank and our team here in Garrett Park, we can bifurcate that and delineate that from the other contractors in town. But if every other part of Montgomery County, they are forced to make this change, that fixed cost has already been taken into account. And I think your point is a good one because, if they have to pay for these costs, they're going to defray them. They're not, I would suspect that the costs will have to be defrayed over all um, of the clientele. One other item specifically around cost, Mr. Mayor, I think is, I work in the solar industry and part of the solar industry is batteries, and the reduction in the cost of batteries is precipitous. It has been incredibly steep over the last, 7 to 10 years and continues to be every single year. That reduction in cost is not inherent in the gas power. The technology is baked in. Those costs are not going down. So I think that to the extent that, we are looking at absorbing a cost, I think it was between $9,000 and $10,000 within the town. I think that the economic benefits, when looked at from, a couple years down the road, I think that actually could potentially reduce some of the cost uptick related to the transition from gas to electric.
Because of the more efficient batteries coming online?
Yeah, I mean, they continue to come online, and these folks that sell the batteries, Montgomery County has in place a program wherein they will, because one of my concerns on this is what happens to the batteries when they're done. These can be potentially harmful. There's companies like Redwood Energy and Li-Cycle and a number of these other companies that exist solely to recycle these batteries and to take the precious metals out of that so that these are not going in the ground. They are being, recycled and reused. And for me, that was encouraging to see that Montgomery County was taking that step, which would be incorporated in Garrett Park as well. Just a couple of thoughts.
Which more or less leads us to the next of Tony's suggested decision areas, which is environment. Certainly the immediate effects of banning gas-powered leaf blowers are pretty evident. Is some of the environmental pollution just displaced in terms of location? Is it going, I mean, is the coal-fired Pepco plant in Dickerson, which generates the power, is this just a sort of a NIMBY element to the environmental aspect of this?
Mary, are you referring to the generation mix that Pepco uses? In other words, we would be using electricity, which is powered by fossil fuel. Is that the point?
Yeah, you plug in the battery recharger to the outlet, but that power is being generated somewhere and is generating pollution of some kind.
Yeah,
Whether it's a one-to-one, maybe less pollution.
So one of the great things about living in Maryland is that we have a renewable portfolio standard, which means that, and apologies for geeking out on this, it's just right down the middle for me, but Maryland has the highest RPS in the country, meaning that by a certain year, we have to have a certain percentage of generation for all residents of Maryland that is clean energy, that is not fossil fuel driven. Maryland is the highest that we have. So better to be here than in any other state, frankly, legislatively. And so I think that mix is high and getting higher. It's driven by the legislation that's currently in place, but not to be completely naive. I mean, we continue to use coal and gas-fired generation in Maryland for sure. But the mix of clean energy is high in Maryland and increasing through the mandate.
Well, I think there's something to be said even on this very small scale of diversifying energy use just generally. I mean, the environmental, people can probably argue all day on that front.
Yeah.
But I think most would agree diversifying energy use, away from more reliance on gas.
Yeah.
Is a good thing.
I think it's a good point. If we're using gas powered leaf blowers, that is 100% fossil fuel. That is, irrespective of NIMBY or someplace else, that is 100%. And so to the extent that, these batteries are being regenerated, using electricity from the general mix, there is an improvement just because you can't be more than 100%, which is what gas powered blowers are. So yeah, but I think it's a good point.
And it's not good for the environment. It's not good for the people behind them who are using them either. I mean, you're polluting the air in the place where they're operating when they're gas powered, is my understanding. And if they're electric, you're not polluting that environmental damage in the same way.
Yeah, it's not necessarily an equivocal comparison point in terms of that battery recharging versus the gas powered
Right.
appliance emissions. Because I think somebody, a resident, provided us some statistics that they uncovered about the 1 hour of gas powered leaf blower use is the equivalent of polluting that happens with a truck driving from DC to Florida, which, it's hard to, that.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll
job.
believe that. I don't know where they came up with that, but I'm gonna check.
If that's, they said they looked up and they found a source for that, but.
Anything further on that issue? Alternate solutions. The town used to distribute compost bins for free. Do we want to start up that and maybe add in rakes? No, of course.
Rakes are much cleaner than even electric powered leaf blowers.
It's left behind. Isn't that good for our yards? As someone who does not contract out their yard work, I tend to err on the side of.
It is. I tried twice and failed. Somehow my posts don't go to the Citizens Association's town forum anymore. But there's a lot of information that the county has put out that leaving at least some leaves on your yard is very healthy for the local ecosystem, and that moving all the leaves to the street, sucking them up and taking them to be shredded and composted is causing a major or a significant killing off of insects, including fireflies and others that normally winter over underneath the leaf debris. So some education encouraging people to move some of the leaves with rakes to the side of their yards and keep them there instead of bringing everything and creating clean yards might be beneficial also.
Anything further? Enforcement, we have the legal issue, TBD. One of my considerable qualms about this county law was the enforcement mechanism that was originally part of the law, which required uploading pictures of people using gas blowers, many of whom are, I expect, immigrants, to a government website. That has just been changed, effective, I believe, December 4. So there is no longer that requirement, and as a practical matter, they took that off the website even earlier. The law has been amended. It remains a relatively user-friendly enforcement mechanism. You do not have to have a DEP inspector come out with a decibel reader or a policeman. You go online, you fill out a form.
What happens?
The Department of Environmental Protection investigates, and if they find, I'm sorry, did I not include that?
Yeah, it was
It is.
part of the package.
There's a 4-step process. They give you lots of chances. The only kicker is that in order to levy a fine, they likely have to take the individual to court, and in that circumstance, the individual who lodged the complaint in the first instance needs to be willing to testify. That would have been the case in any event. And my personal sense is it's not such an onerous requirement that it should probably cause us to consider it a disqualifier for the.
I understand we absolutely need to take the practical matter of enforcement seriously, but I think there's a lot of value in setting up a beneficial ban and having the expected significant amount of compliance, voluntary compliance that would not require enforcement. That in and of itself would provide a huge amount of benefits for all the reasons we've been discussing.
Are there any other topics we need to discuss in the general area of the leaf blower ban?
Well, one I've seen pointed out by a couple of people here is that in order to charge the batteries, they sometimes bring along generators, which of course pollute themselves because you gotta have something to turn that thing. And so the question is, how much noise are they making? How much pollution are they making to charge a bunch of batteries so that we can then turn around and say, yes, we're using battery powered equipment?
That was, I think it's a good point. That was Tony's son actually saw that instance where there was a generator behind him, and that's arguably probably just as bad, if not worse. One of the things to consider, and Tony brought this to my attention, is that the cost of that generator, the cost of burning the diesel, would actually be more expensive than buying
For that company.
for that company. And so if it's a for-profit company, I suspect they're, again, not to say that didn't happen. I'm sure it did. And maybe there's instances in where that does happen. I hope it wouldn't be a lot. But from an economic standpoint, if you're a for-profit business, it's much more economically propitious to have spare batteries that you would just simply replace.
Well, you have to by virtue of the fact that I own an electric. I've had one for years, but
Ahead of the curve.
yes. And it takes longer typically to recharge the batteries, even on a fast charge, than it does to actually run them out of juice. And so the result of which is that typically, you have to have several batteries because you're constantly having to charge and go through this whole cycle. And where are you going to charge? I mean, you could the alternate would be to bring a truck full of batteries with you, I guess. But if anybody's looked at these battery costs, they're not exactly cheap. I mean,
When did you buy when did you buy your battery?
I bought mine probably 4 years ago.
Mine charge fast.
Yeah, in that time, Phil, there's been the improvements of not only the charge, but the strength of that has gone up incrementally. It's a fact. It's in place.
It's all new. I mean, I think the successful businesses will invest in modern equipment, adjust their business practices, including the way they market themselves, and see this through, because the rest of they have to, whether we do this or not, the whole county has done, or, and who knows how many other counties in Maryland will do it. So I think there is an accepted growing pains for residents and for the businesses, but it's not an insurmountable issue. And in fact, there's maybe plenty of opportunity for business growth for those companies that really dive into this. So.
I mean, to argue the other side of it, I will say that with mine, I have it set up so it's one of those quick attach ones. So basically, I just change the head on it to a string trimmer, guy, leaf blower, little chainsaw thing I got to knock off branches. So I mean, they're versatile in that respect. It's a lot easier than gasoline.
And then you just charge it at your house?
I just plug it in my charger sitting there, drop the thing in the charger at night and off it goes.
It's good in the morning.
Mhm.
Maybe you could star in like a demo video that we could put on the Garrett Park website.
I could do that.
Okay, anything further before we close out discussion of the general policy and factual issues?
I make my last one quick on it.
Very quick, non-cumulative if possible, non-cumulative if possible.
Make it very quick, I guess. I was just going to say, the fact that this rule is now applied countywide, many other services, as Gerald pointed out, they're already bringing in their battery powered equipment. So the council has the opportunity to actually do nothing and just see how things progress and see what it's like and listen and look at the noise level of electric versus gas and just wait and see how things, because a lot of the services that come in are already using electric. So that's another option. I just wanted to point that out.
Well, I will say, I don't know that I've seen any landscaping companies in town using electric.
You know, I did today, the Shorb,
Did you? Okay.
they're using electric.
Yeah.
I'm hearing a lot of gas leaf blowers all the time. It's exhausting and really loud and annoying in my life.
All right, we'll move then to the next item on the agenda, which is the contract award for Yandell Park Construction Project. Town Manager Matthews has given us a detailed memo, particularly on the background, most of which most of us are familiar with. Barb, would you like to kick this off? with
Sure. So I would just note that back in March of this year, the town council approved submission of a approved park design to Montgomery County Planning for mandatory referral. That park design was developed following a series of community engagement activities, which are spelled out in the staff memo, so I won't go through those. In October, we issued RFP number 2025-3 for the Yandell Park construction project. There were 5 companies that attended the mandatory pre-bid meeting, which was held in late October, and the bid submission deadline was November 13th. Included in your agenda packet is the bid tabulation. As you'll note, we received only one bid, which was from Keller Brothers, Inc., and their bid price was $249,000. A copy of Keller Brothers' bid is provided in your agenda packet as attachment 2. Our assistant town manager, Kayla Bucher, did conduct reference checks for the projects provided by Keller Brothers. She spoke to representatives with Montgomery County Public Schools and the Montgomery Village Foundation. Both of these organizations have utilized Keller Brothers, Inc. for multiple projects. The representatives for both Montgomery County Public Schools and Montgomery Village Foundation reported no contract disputes or significant delays in Keller Brothers completing projects. They provided positive feedback on the site superintendents who were assigned to their respective jobs, and they informed Kayla that the company's quality of work was good. So staff is recommending this evening that the town council award a contract to Keller Brothers for the Yandell Park construction project in the amount of $249,000. Staff does not recommend rebidding project, given the minimal bidder interest. And, it is always possible that if we put this project out to bid, the cost will come in even higher. Also, I would just note, included in your agenda packet is just sort of a recap of the funding for the project. Thing I did want to call out is based on our expenses incurred to date, and I would just note that for the purpose of the 2 state grants that we have for this project, the key date is May 3rd of 2023. This is the state-defined project start date for the funding it is provided, and it is also the relevant project date for the town submitting its required match under the program open space program. I would just note that the price of Keller Brothers was higher than what Norton Land Design had provided as an estimate in January 2025. Obviously, we're quite a bit down the road from that time frame in terms of construction. So there's been some passage of time. We don't know definitively why the price is higher than what Norton estimated. But obviously, the economic landscape has also shifted with the imposition of tariffs earlier this year. So the one thing I did want to just call to your attention is that there will be some additional funding that will need to be allocated if this bid is accepted. Specifically, and this shows up in the budget amendment you'll consider later this evening, there would be approximately $21,000 more in town funding that would need to be allocated for this project. So with that,
The town of Garrett Park Fund is $100,000. Is that different than what you're talking about?
yeah,
now?
this is what was submitted, Lisa, to the state
I see.
when I filed for the grants. So it was assumed to be a $350,000 project with the state picking up 250,000 of the cost and the town picking up 100. So with this, we did thankfully have some things that came in less than what we had anticipated, specifically the demolition of the house came in way less than what we had thought. So that kind of helped cushion the blow a little bit, but our share would increase from the 100,000 that was part of the state funding applications to just under 121,000 with the acceptance of Keller Brothers bid.
Including the administration by the
Yes,
architect?
yes, I did include that.
Thank you.
Barb, you mentioned minimal interest as evidenced by one RFP. You said we had 5 companies.
We had 5 people who attended.
Interest.
Yeah, who attended the mandatory pre-bid. Why companies end up not bidding, I think is a question mark. One of the companies is pretty well known to Clark Azar, our civil engineer. His comment was that they often show up at pre-bid meetings. They file a whole bunch of questions as part of the bid process, which they were the only ones who submitted questions, and we responded to those. And then they decide not to bid. So I did not follow up with any of the companies to find out why. I mean, it could be that things have shifted. I mean, companies look for ways to keep their staff occupied. So they often look for projects where they can fill in gaps in their schedule. But ultimately, it's a little project. It's not a huge profit margin for someone.
Right.
Is it possible to solicit some feedback from those companies to see if we can determine why?
Yeah, I can certainly reach out to them because we have their contact information that they provided at the bid meeting.
Is there any other mechanism for distributing the RFP that might get it in the hands of companies size-wise more suited to this project?
This was posted to the state procurement site, and that is where virtually everyone who's looking for projects looks at Emma. So
in addition to that, like neighboring community recommendations or
I did ask both Norton Land Design and Clark Azar, just as we were gearing up, if they were aware of companies. There were 3 names that kind of overlapped between those 2 companies because Clark Azar and Norton Land Design sometimes do work together. 2 of those 3 companies were present at the pre-bid meeting. One had initially indicated interest. They kind of sent me this fairly cryptic email that I'm not sure I could discern. It appears that they either did work for one of the large municipalities in Montgomery County or for county parks, and apparently had a rather unfortunate experience with a project in the middle of a residential neighborhood, and they said they would never go near one again. So they did not show up at the pre-bid meeting. Clark Azar had mentioned 1 or 2 smaller companies, but he said in all good conscience he couldn't recommend them. But so, this is kind of where we're at.
and did Clark Azar, do they assist with the RFP drafting?
They assisted. So we have sort of a standard template we use for RFPs. I did ask Jason Azar to review not only the part that I drafted, but also just to review the technical specifications, which came from Norton Land Design. So I think the RFP was well reviewed.
Yeah. And aligned with a standard RFP.
It is, yeah. We got really fairly limited questions, I think, from the people who attended the pre-bid meeting. And, those responses were issued as a bid addendum.
Anything else preliminarily? I have one point. Barb,
Mhm.
before we take this up, do we need to introduce ordinance 2026-1 and pass it as an emergency ordinance? Otherwise, we will be voting funds in excess of the appropriation.
Yeah, that's obviously, I try not to play a lawyer without a license, but, I think I don't know that I would consider a budget amendment to be an emergency ordinance typically. I mean, I think you could put in the motion. I mean, if you want to flip the order of what you're considering to at least know that there's support for the budget amendment, I suppose, Mayor Keller, that could be an appropriate step.
I'm sorry,
I mean, if you want to make sure that there is support for the budget amendment and allocating additional funding for this project, you could defer asking for a vote on this contract authorization until the budget amendment is at least introduced. I'd have to pull up the charter to see what constitutes an emergency, but I'm not sure this would qualify.
So when we had to, when we needed to authorize a higher amount for a contract the last month or the month before, I asked about whether we needed to first move money from contingency over, and I think that we ended up not doing that. So to me, this is a similar situation. We
Yeah.
do have funding in the operating contingency budget.
That's correct, and it would cover the
So overall,
shortfall.
the budget
Okay.
has funding available.
okay.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask a question related to this? Barb, when would Keller Brothers commence construction?
I checked with them. So the way the bid was structured, bids have a shelf life where companies, so I think I put in 90 days. Obviously, this is not the time of year you do construction, so they have 225 days to complete the project from the date that notice to proceed is given.
Mhm.
So typically, if you were to approve the contract award, they've already actually provided their bonds. So simply it would be a matter of getting them to sign the contract, providing their certificate of insurance. And once the contract's executed, at that point, notice to proceed is given. And that starts the clock on their 225 days. I did touch base with them and to find out kind of when they anticipated starting construction. It kind of follows along the lines that I've discussed with Norton Land Design, that someone would probably take advantage of December and January and likely February to kind of order materials and have all that ready. And then assuming we don't have a terrible winter, they would likely start construction in March.
Mhm.
Keller Brothers indicated that it's probably roughly about a 90-day project.
Yeah, that's helpful, the NTP. Thank you. So hypothetically, if we're looking at an early spring start, I know that we're looking to vote on this tonight, but if we were to perhaps consider ways, I'm not saying that we should do this automatically, but if we were to consider ways to have other groups involved. And the only reason for that is typically when you have one bidder, their price is their price. But if you have two or three or four, then we could potentially negotiate. I don't know if that's 10,000 or 50,000 or 80,000, but if you had said they're starting construction next week, then I would say, well, we have a distant situation. But if we've got 90 days to NTP, and then 200 days, subsequent to that, perhaps that wouldn't mess up their schedule too much if I interpreted that.
Are you suggesting that we look for other bidders? Is that what you're? I'm not sure I'm following. I apologize.
No, not at all. No, it's me, not you. Believe me, inelegant as always. But I think that for me, getting a single bid is, part of the bid process is to have folks that, multiple bids so that we can
Musical.
drive that down. If it's something where we are able to perhaps entertain, figure out a way to get some of those 5 bidders in, or maybe as to Chris's point, there's, if there are other folks, and if we're talking about real money there, I do feel that I like the position of the town with multiple bids. I think it gives us
Sure.
more leverage rather than accepting the 249. I don't know if that's a great price or a terrible price, but it is a single price that we're being asked to take. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I would just say I mean, obviously these bidders invested time in coming to a pre-bid meeting and chose not to bid. I can certainly reach out to them. I think to allow companies to come in and submit bids after bids have been publicly advertised it's just contradictory to the whole idea of fair bidding. So I would be very uncomfortable doing that. I think that's very unfair to the whole bid process, and and Keller Brothers did participate in that and went through the
In
process.
other words, you would have to just kickstart the whole process.
Yeah, and I
Re-
think my fear, I think if we rebid this project, is we could either find ourselves with no bids, or you have Keller Brothers sitting there knowing that they were the only player in town and comes back and says, well, why don't I jack up my bid and see if anyone else comes in? I mean, we could end up paying more money. It's a calculated risk, and that's your risk to decide whether you wish to assume. It is not something staff recommends, however.
Before we go further, why don't we just get a motion to get this on the table? I'll entertain a motion to award the Yandell Park construction project bid to Keller Brothers Incorporated in the amount of $249,000. Why don't we call it 250? Just
I'll make a motion for the contract authorization for the Keller Brothers for the $250,000.
I'll second that motion.
any further discussion? All right, I'll call the question. All in favor of awarding the Yandell Park construction project bid to Keller Brothers in the amount of $250,000, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
I'm opposed.
I'm opposed as well.
Okay.
Um,
Did you want to do a?
yeah, if we
Yeah.
could. Councilmember Stroud,
Opposed.
Councilmember Bennett,
Aye.
Councilmember Deutsch,
Opposed.
Councilmember Max,
Agree.
Councilmember Schultz.
4.
Thank you.
Oh, one quick question for you, Barb. How many days did they say approximately? You said like 100 and something. I didn't catch it.
They have 225 days to get it
Right.
to achieve substantial completion. I think a lot would depend on the weather, but Keller Brothers tentatively estimated about 90 days.
90. Okay, thank you.
The next item is the award of a construction administration services contract to Norton Land Design in the amount of, and again, let's round up to $5,000.
Oh, Barb, I wanted to ask, has this firm worked with the design company before? Have they worked together on any other projects? Do you know?
There was a project, I could look it up, Lisa, on my email. They were the contractor on some project that Norton Land Design was involved with. What Mike Norton relayed is that they didn't get any questions or anything, and that the project turned out fine,
Okay,
is
thank
what he
you.
had told me.
So on the next item, Barb, do you want to summarize the background?
Yes, I think as everyone knows, Norton Land Design was the firm that assisted the town with developing a design for Yandell Park. That contract, which is now completed. They also prepared construction specifications for bidding purposes. We are seeking your authorization to execute a second new contract with Norton Land Design for construction administration services during the park construction process. Basically, as the park designer, they are best positioned to basically respond to any RFIs, which are essentially contractor requests for clarification of anything in the specs. And basically just helping us, once the project is complete, developing a final punch list. So their scope of services is outlined on the rear page. They would basically work with staff on facilitating the pre-construction meeting. They would review any contractor RFIs and conduct progress meetings with the contracting, Keller Brothers in this case, and develop the final punch list. I did want to note that the scope of work that is outlined, which is item 1, does include work that Keller Brothers did for us that was not covered under their other contracts. So Mike Norton put it into this one. They essentially attended the pre-bid meeting, facilitated that, and also assisted staff with responding to questions from bidders. So that's the one line item. I will just note what's in your budget amendment. I did assume for budget amendment purposes, the 4,960 plus the potential of one additional meeting at $480. I need to look up what that number is. But it'd be those two figures. So slightly more Mayor Keller than $5,000 is what we assume for budgetary purposes.
It, the
5,000.
project understanding that Norton submitted includes one pre-bid meeting.
Yeah, I asked Mike Norton about that. I mean, we can handle it one of two ways. Because it wasn't, they did attend a pre-bid meeting. And candidly, they needed to be there because they needed to be able to answer questions about the specifications which they developed. And they did assist with staff answering questions submitted by bidders. We had two ways, I guess, of handling that. One was we just paid them on an hourly basis for the work they did, since it was outside their initial contract, and reduced this price. Mike Norton thought it would just be easier to include that relatively small line item under this contract. They have not yet bid for it, and they have not been paid for it.
So that's after the fact compensation.
It would be, yes.
And the review of RFIs and up to 4 progress meetings are on site, right? They
Those would
go to
be,
the
yes.
site and look at what's
Yeah,
doing.
RFIs are often submitted electronically because they will arise undoubtedly outside of progress meetings, but the progress meetings would be on site.
Right. And they'll approve the RFIs and go to the site and make sure the work's been done correctly.
Correct. And once substantial completion is achieved, then they would come out, do an inspection, develop the final punch list, and provide that to Keller Brothers.
Is there a final inspection required?
That's part of what is, I guess, in the development of the punch list would be the kind of the final inspection.
Okay, good.
And depending on the number of items, we obviously could have them come back out if that was needed to do final inspection, or Mr. Miller might be able to help with that as well.
Good.
Do I hear a motion to authorize execution of a contract with Norton Land Design for construction administration services for the Andell Park construction project in the amount of $5,000?
I'll make that motion.
Mayor Keller, if I may, could we ask for authorization up to $5,440? This would allow one additional progress meeting if it's needed.
5.5 then.
Yeah.
Lisa, you moved.
I'll make the motion for $5,000.
I'll second that.
5,500.
And is
Do
there
I
a
hear
second?
6?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Was that unanimous?
Yes.
Just with the acknowledgement that I know this is part and parcel with the Keller bid, right? But just the acknowledgement that again, I was opposed on the Keller Brothers. But yes, for Norton. Don't want to be remarkably inconsistent, that's all.
Has the Parks and Open Space Committee been part of this? Do they know that this is being awarded and that this is the team and all of that?
They have been kept apprised. There was some talk that they would welcome the opportunity to review bid. But that didn't happen. So I think they would welcome updates, and as council liaison, I'll provide them to them. I would say, and maybe this is maybe for after the fact sort of housekeeping, but whether these are the milestones as listed in sort of the items, or whatever the key milestones for this project is, I think we want to make sure that I want to make sure the council's sort of kept apprised of big milestones with this project, even if that's outside of the manager update at these
Sure.
meetings. And I know the Parks Committee will welcome those updates as well.
And you've got the proposal, so you can give it to them.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
certainly, if they would like to see it.
All right. The next item is introduction of ordinance number 226-1, amending the fiscal year 2026 budget. Barb, if you want to, I think we've
We've
more or
covered,
less covered a lot of this.
we've covered many of the items under the financial report. I guess just in a nutshell, overall revenues would increase by $232,000, $232,080. That is a combination of, as the mayor noted, many of the items you've talked about already. The additional revenue from the prior year carryover, the reimbursement from the state, the insurance proceeds. The one that we did not talk about in the financial report has to do with account 5.2.2, which is Penn Place rents. A portion of the rent that Black Market pays to the town is referred to in the lease as an adjustment rent. And what this is the restaurant's anticipated share of building-related expenses and the town's insurance cost for Penn Place. The lease requires us to do a reconciliation at the end of every fiscal year, which if there's an underpayment, then Black Market pays us the shortfall. If there is, if we overestimated the building expenses or the adjustment rent, then Black Market can either get a credit or we can just pay them what they overpaid. In this case, for FY 2025, which was year one of the new lease with Black Market, that reconciliation of the adjustment rent indicated that there had been an underpayment. So I notified Black Market accordingly, and they did make up that shortfall very promptly. That same reconciliation also indicated that what we had included as an adjustment rent in FY 2026 was likely understated. The lease does provide a provision where we notify Black Market of that likely understatement. So their adjustment rent was increased as of October 2025. So for the lease, which we have not specifically talked about before, the proposed change in Penn Place rents would be $9,067.
How much?
$9,067.
Thank you.
And there was obviously an increase in their base rent, which is just by 3%. So overall revenues would increase, as I mentioned, by $232,080. We did talk earlier this evening about the work that is being done at Penn Place to remediate the water damage. At your meeting on October 20th, you did authorize execution of a contract for the mold remediation and restoration work. And the amount allocated for those activities was $30,000. So you'll see that this budget amendment proposes to increase the line item for Penn Place from $56,000 to $86,000. Kind of the net effect of this is that the transfer to capital would increase by $202,080. That's the net of those two figures. What this budget amendment proposes is of that $202,080, $20,908 would go to Yendel Park to make up the shortfall we talked about earlier this evening. $13,230 would go to account 28.1 utilities. This is to purchase a new luminaire and have some repair work done to the pole that was struck by the town tree that fell. And then the balance, which is $167,942, would go to 27.2, which is town hall. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you have, but that's the budget amendment in a shortfall. Short
We need to
thing.
increase 29.1.1 based on the numbers we just rounded up.
No, I think it'll be fine.
Okay. So to tee this up for discussion, I will entertain a motion to introduce ordinance number 2026-1, fiscal year 2026 budget amendments.
Make a motion.
I'll second it.
Been moved and seconded. Is there Any discussion?
Yeah, I've just got a question. I'm wondering, in light of either us adopting or not this leaf blower ordinance, do we have sufficient money to cover the $9,000 estimate?
What I would suggest, since you have not yet discussed what the effective date of any opt-in would be, and I know the mayor has some thoughts on that. If the effective date of any opt-in would not be into the new until the next fiscal year, then you could allocate the funding then.
Yeah.
So I would probably just suggest you let the discussion sort of play out, and you can always make a modification to the budget amendment at second reading as needed.
Okay.
All right, any further discussion? So I'll call for a vote on introduction of ordinance number 2026-1 encompassing FY 2026 budget amendment number 1. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Otherwise minded? None? Unanimous? So we move to ordinance number 2026-2, which is a very long and cumbersome title. So we'll just call it opting into the county gas-powered leaf blower ban. Since it's my matter, I circulated a memo. I don't think it's necessary that we substantially review that, perhaps to tee it up for discussion in the context of the specific ordinance. I will ask for a motion to introduce ordinance number 2026-2.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We'll have discussion. As I note, it's pretty straightforward except for the effective date. In the ordinary course of events, this would become effective, assuming we introduce it tonight and you pass it in January, it would become effective in early February. It seems to me a deferred effective date is relatively painless, given that there are relatively few leaf blowers in operation in winter or early spring. So I would be interested in people's thoughts about deferring the effective date. We can establish the effective date in the introduced ordinance.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
About in the body of the ordinance, this is very silly, but,
No.
the third whereas prohibiting, among other things, the sale or use of the leaf blowers.
No.
Does that prohibit folks or the town from selling their gas leaf blowers, or is that? I
Probably,
mean, like, you wouldn't
yeah.
have to get rid of them.
The ban on the sale has been in effect since July of 24, actually. And that's an interesting question, but I suspect the answer is yes within Montgomery County.
So like a resident or the town getting rid of our gas equipment, we would need to sell it before the ban. I mean, technically you would need to sell it before the ban goes into effect.
Well, if you're trying to sell it
believe
within
so. I
Montgomery
don't
County,
know.
you're going to have a hard time anyway.
Yeah, you could sell it outside of Montgomery
Yeah, you can
County.
go to
Right.
Frederick
You
County.
put it on like
Right.
eBay.
Yeah.
Craigslist.
I mean, really, we can only ban the sale within the town.
Right.
We don't have jurisdiction outside of Garrett Park.
I see, so sell to
Sadly.
someone else.
Right.
But it's worth checking.
Right, because.
I'm not sure it applies to private sales,
Okay.
but if it does, it would only be within Montgomery County.
Right. Okay.
I'll just say I'm in agreement with the proposed effective date of July 1st, 2026. I think that makes a lot of sense. It gives us a lot of time to give notice and provide some education to go along with the ordinance. And it has that beneficial impact related to the budget that was discussed earlier.
Can we post something to our Garrett Park website if we approve this ordinance that it's in effect as of July
Mhm.
2026?
I think we should carefully consider
That and more.
um, well-crafted message to the town explaining this.
Yeah.
Should it happen?
And in the bugle too.
Mhm.
And I would consider a well-crafted message to commercial landscape maintenance people who operate in town.
Mhm. Do we, Barb, maybe you may have a sense of this, does that July 1st deadline feel like it can be accommodated by the town for its own equipment?
Yeah, I think if the effective date was going to be July 1, because our maintenance team members do use the leaf blowers, it's not just this time of year, then you probably likely would need to maybe consider amending the budget because they would have to have equipment that they're able to use as of July 1.
Now, query, are we talking July 1 or August 1? If it's July 1,
I had heard July 1 from
July
JLA.
26.
That was what was in the memo as a proposal.
That's
Uh,
what's in here now.
that
In the
means
draft.
that neither the town nor anyone else will be able to take advantage of the rebates. Because you have to exhibit your receipt dated after whenever the fund is replenished. It's anticipated to be July 1.
So should we
I
push
mean,
it
I'd be
back?
fine with pushing it back another month.
Mm,
I'd be fine with pushing it back another month.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
So if we pushed it to August 1st, we would have 30 days to take advantage of the replenished rebate.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I would be for that. as
And
well.
to just publicize the heck out of its availability to the commercial firms that have indicated the financial burden that this will impose upon them.
So we write them a letter?
Yeah, and I think maybe find some Spanish-speaking friends to help.
Encourage residents to inform their
Yeah.
companies they use.
I mean, the county probably put out messaging in multiple languages that we could borrow from.
All right, so the motion is for introduction of the ordinance as circulated with an August 1 effective date. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, we will move to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
That sounds unanimous to me. Are we running ahead of time? I can't believe it.
Just
Not
for us,
possible.
probably.
Did not feel like it, gallery.
Yeah. So the next item of business is, as I indicated earlier, discussion of potential terms of a new lease with the Garrett Park Swimming Pool Association, by which I mean the subject matters and such details as we feel are critical to be included in any lease, not the literal wording. Okay, Barb, do you want to kick that off?
Sure. So the current lease between the town of Garrett Park and the Garrett Park Swimming Pool Association was executed in August of 1953, and a copy of that 1953 lease is provided as part of your agenda packet materials. Based on some back and forth Donna and I had at some point, I guess we had some questions. Our best understanding is that it doesn't appear that the lease was ever formally amended, at least not that we can identify, since its 1953 execution, rather that there are some town council meeting minutes that our former archivist, Claire McDonald, had provided to me and I provided to Donna, that where there were discussions about some changes in practice on my sort of rules of engagement, for lack of a better term. But there were no formal lease amendments that we can actually identify. As Donna mentioned, there's been discussion about modifying certain terms in the lease agreement. As I mentioned, I believe it was in my October report, given the age of the existing lease, both Mayor Keller and I believe we should just simply execute a new lease rather than amend the existing document. And Donna had indicated that the Swimming Pool Association was fine with that approach. To alleviate Donna's concerns about the early stages, this really just hasn't been before the council, though we've talked about it a lot, so don't fear. So this is kind of a non-exhaustive list of items that we've sort of exchanged some ideas about. There are certain issues in terms of liability language that would basically be determined by the town attorney ultimately. There's a question about what type of level of insurance coverage. That'll be something that staff would discuss with the local government insurance trust and then with the Swimming Pool Association. But the items that are outlined in the memo are items that would be very helpful to get some guidance from the town council on this evening, just so we have the benefit of your initial thoughts as we work together to craft a lease. So I'll just kind of walk through those. If you all have a thumbs up or thumbs down, that would be very helpful. So one is the proposed lease term. The Swimming Pool Association has proposed an initial lease term of 20 years. As proposed, that lease would renew automatically for successive 10-year terms unless either party provides notice of its intent not to renew at least 1 year prior to the end of the lease term expiration. So once again, just sort of looking for, is the town council comfortable with that proposed lease term and successive terms?
I'm comfortable with 20 years, 10 years, and 10 years.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that as well.
I am as well.
In terms of the lease payment, this is one of those examples where where we started realizing there were no formal lease amendments. So probably, according to Mary Rutke, our accountant and the former bookkeeper for the Pool Association, probably roughly around 2,000 is what she relayed to me. So the lease payments to the town were very modest. I'm not sure of all the history, but right around 2001, the amount that the Pool Association paid to the town started increasing by 10%. Once again, it doesn't appear there was any formal lease amendment that we could identify. By way of information, the Pool Association's lease payment to the town for this fiscal year, FY 2026, is $8,771. As part of the new lease execution, the Pool Association has proposed a year one lease payment of $9,000. And then for each year thereafter, the lease payment would increase by 2.5%. Just by way of comparison, obviously these are commercial leases. The town's lease with Black Market Bistro, their payments increase, their base payment increases by 3% a year. And that's the same percentage that is applied to the small office on the third floor. So just looking really for some guidance from the town council on the proposed 2.5% annual escalation in the lease payment and the year one payment being $9,000.
Barb, what's the nursery school?
They don't pay anything.
Okay.
That was in recognition of their investment of $400,000
No, I'm in the.
in the building.
No.
Yeah, no, just
So is everyone comfortable with the proposed $9,000 for year one and 2.5% thereafter?
My only concern about the 2.5% increase is if we experience a period of higher inflation and the lease doesn't relate to the cost of the dues for the pool. I'm just wondering if we're protected in those events. I mean, I guess you're separating the dues, the pool charges members to the lease payment increase.
I mean, the pool base, there's none.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but there could be. Okay.
And just for background.
Yeah, Donna, could you go up? So in case that's okay, just so anyone who's watching later can hear you.
Sorry. The 2.5 wasn't just made up out of air.
Right.
Just to be clear, we had proposed CPI
Right.
and.
I'll say it. I beg Donna
Yeah,
not to get,
Mark
not,
came back and said, please,
yeah,
don't have it be a variable thing because.
it's just a lot of
timing and
staff
the-
work
and the
for
back
very
and
little
It's
forth.
just
money.
harder to
So I
figure
went
out.
back and looked at 25-year history of
Right.
CPI, which includes 1.5 inflationary periods, let's
Right.
call it, and it was like 2.56.
Yeah,
That's, yeah.
okay.
So it's an historical average that you probably shouldn't allow recent short-term events to influence our determination too much.
Okay.
Okay, so it sounds like everyone's good.
I'm
Some
comfortable.
items, okay.
I do have a question with regard to the CSX fence. They're making the pool.
Hadn't gotten quite there yet, Phil.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Moving on now.
I'll move it along, Phil. So regarding fencing, the Pool Association has proposed a provision that would make the town responsible, and I'm just quoting, so I get it right, repair of walls or fencing that will convey with the property to the town and can be used for the operation of the property for a purpose other than a pool facility. This excludes the fencing along the CSX railroad line, unquote. So what's noted in the memo is just any kind of relevant factors that you all might want to consider. So this kind of came up, I was unaware of this actually, Donna probably was, but the town attorney had done some research a couple years ago just related to the properties along Cambria Avenue, completely unrelated to the pool. One of the documents that he shared as part of that research was a 1957 deed between the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad Company, and as Donna already alluded to earlier this evening, and the Pool Association. A provision of that deed does require a fence to be maintained, separating the land conveyed to the Pool Association as part of that deed from the remaining railroad property. The only other thing I know anything about fencing here is that there is some fencing that is referenced in the special use exceptions. If you're not familiar with that term, it's zoning approvals that allows the pool to operate. And fencing surrounding the perimeter of the pool is referenced in the initial, I believe it's the initial special use exception, and then some of the subsequent amendments to that special use exception granted by the Board of Appeals.
So I believe the bright line standard should be that the pool is required for the entirety of the fencing, since it's a county requirement for any swimming pool, and a county requirement that is, I believe, reiterated in the special exception. I think there needs to be one caveat to that. And God will be in the details on drafting it, but I think the caveat needs to be that if the town performs work on its own immediately adjacent property on either the east or the west, so the dog park or the ball field, work that requires any change to the fence by virtue of the town's construction, that the town be responsible for that fence work.
That makes sense.
I'm just curious why you would limit it to the east and west, because what if the town wants to redo all the berms on the front of Cambria and has to disrupt the fence there?
All right, but I think that's such a remote possibility.
I mean, this
As
this
is-
lease
as
could
is-
last for 70
as
years.
is-
Making that as more of an.
We're at 90 now,
example rather
Donna, and counting.
was that a definitive statement or just an example of where the town might have work?
Well,
Were you
it could,
specifying?
it could simply be,
Could be any of the
it
four,
could
but
be, this is where the drafting comes in. It could be any adjacent town property. That leaves out the CSX side.
Okay.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
isn't it the CSX side where the fence is in the ball field park? Isn't
No.
that,
no.
it runs along the side of the railroad track?
But that's the town ball field, not
So,
the leased space.
so that
Once it
fence,
crosses over into.
so that fence would be included.
No,
Okay.
I mean, the main one that you're probably talking about, at least coming up shortly, is going to be the fence between the ball field and the pool,
And in the court.
conceivably in the court, yeah.
I mean,
and if it eventuates that, instead of replacing the backstop on the ball field, we put in a taller fence that would be much in excess of what is required
And move
for
the
the
fence.
pool, we should absorb
Pay
that
for it.
cost.
Right, yeah, no, that makes perfect sense.
yeah, I
So
think.
Chris, I want to make sure I understand what you were
Sorry, go
proposing.
ahead.
Sorry, Barbara.
No, that's good. No, I was just going to clarify. I was waiting for the discussion and then wanted to clarify something, but go ahead.
Okay, possible we're asking to clarify the same thing? I didn't quite follow. Were you saying then that you recommend that fence repair generally be a pool board responsibility unless the town takes actions that affect the condition of the fence?
Correct.
Okay.
That's what I was going to clarify. Thank you, Jeremy. Yeah, it sounds like, is everyone generally in agreement with what's been discussed so far? We can work out the details in the actual drafting of the lease.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just have another question with, it's in the second line of under fencing. And it basically says fencing that will convey with the property to the town. Are we moving property here?
What I understood, and Donna, please correct me if I'm wrong, is that the pool association's initial request was recognizing that the fencing might have some value if at some point, unlikely, the town terminated the lease. You were simply trying to, the pool association, that is not you personally, we're trying to say that the fencing has some value that should be recognized. Is that kind of a fair, oh, I'm sorry.
It's set up as a swimming pool. So unless you're going to completely repurpose the entire acreage, which seems highly unlikely. But if this particular association somehow terminated its relationship with you and a new one took over control of the pool, the fencing would convey and be part of that agreement at least.
Goes with the pool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, as would all improve.
Well, no, it doesn't go with the pool. It goes with the property
Right, if you.
as, well, for whatever purpose the property is leased for. But it seems unlikely you would lease the property for something that
Other than
doesn't
a-
require a fence.
Yeah.
Right,
Okay.
if that makes sense. That was the thing, but this is months ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm kind of moving on to tree care, pruning and removal.
So
Oops, I'm sorry.
we're in agreement, pool maintains the fence.
Unless the
Unless-
town's action somehow triggers something.
There is.
She's also, he lives in the estate, but she's also on the board, and has been.
Thanks for coming.
And these are our residents.
Okay.
I mean,
Donna.
I'd like to hear the whole conversation,
Yeah.
not negotiating.
Sure.
So kind of tree care and pruning and removal has been another one of those non-formalized type of things. So there's been sort of a past practice under the current lease, once again, not formalized, was that the Swimming Pool Association would arrange for the pruning and removal of trees inside the fence and pay for the same. The pool, and we're talking about town trees, I might add. So these are town-owned trees. The Pool Association has proposed the following as provisions in the new lease. The Pool Association would be responsible for tree pruning. The town would be responsible for the removal of dead or unsafe trees, treatment of trees impacted by insects or other diseases, and the replacement or addition of town trees within the perimeter of the pool property, inside the fence, basically. The other information included in your memo is sort of by way of background. It is a little outdated, so I would note that. So in early 2024, as you know, the initial discussions about the lease were starting, Joanna Welch, who was then mayor at the time, asked the town's consulting arborist, Mr. Normandy, to assess the trees in the general vicinity of the swimming pool to determine what type of pruning and removal work might be needed. Obviously, we're now coming up on almost 2 years past that time, so this information may be of somewhat limited value. At that time, Mr. Normandy identified approximately $20,000 of work that was needed. And Donna, Mr. Normandy must have talked to you about this because I'm going on the notes he gave me. There was one tree removal which would not have been necessitated by, it wasn't dead, it's not unsafe. And he included in that 20,000 this particular sassafras tree because it kind of didn't fall into the criteria we were talking about. So that tree removal would presumably be the responsibility of the pool association. That $20,000 figure does not include the cost of removing 2 large trees, which would be the responsibility of the town under this proposal. Mr. Normandy at that time estimated the cost of removing those 2 trees, which would be the town's responsibility, in the range of $6,500 to $7,000. Obviously, we need to get updated figures for all of this. Mr. Normandy's 2024 assessment, when I went back and looked at the notes, and it's been some time, I have to confess, noted 2 trees that were in need of insect treatment for bark aphid, which would be the town's responsibility under the Pool Association's proposal. Honestly, I can't tell from, my notes from 2024 whether he included that insect treatment in his $20,000 estimate or not. But I do think just we can kind of separate the numbers for a minute and just talk about the concept and, hopefully get some guidance from you all on that and get an updated assessment so that everyone has the benefit of that. So I think once again, it's the pool association would be responsible for pruning. We would be responsible for non-discretionary removals, as well as treating trees that might have some kind of insect infestation.
Do we need to add use for pruning using the town approved contractors?
No, none of them are street trees.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's up to you all. I don't have an opinion on that. I can certainly ask Mr. Normandy if he has one, but
We could allow it, right? Not necessarily, if it was beneficial to the pool association to use the contractors. We have.
Yeah, in fact, the tree limb I referred to in my remarks, Barb connected me with Empire and they came and did it very cheaply.
Yeah.
Definitely at your price, not my price.
Right.
So yeah,
You
I wouldn't want to be bind
Excluded.
the association to use the town's vendors, but I do think
We can share resources.
we-
Donna, would you be uncomfortable with, I guess at least maybe the town having a list of possible tree companies that you might be considering using and have Mr. Normandy review that? I know he's,
I mean, we've talked about it. So,
Yeah.
And JC Walter does most of the pruning that is done in season and.
Yeah.
that sort of stuff.
I know he,
I'm fine with the bullets, the GPS.
okay.
Yay, that's proposed here.
Yeah, I mean, I think one way to look at this proposal is the pruning is something that can be easily budgeted from year to year and is make predictable costs for the pool association, whereas sudden death of a tree and the sudden increase might be more difficult for the pool association to budget for, and the town could absorb that cost more easily. So I can see a logic behind this scheme.
And preventing the possibility of dues increasing, which also puts a financial burden on residents.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm
Yeah, the
not,
plantings around the pool, I think, are gorgeous. I mean, it's never looked so good. In my opinion.
yeah.
Yeah, I told JC.
So it sounds like everyone's comfortable with sort of the basic framework. I'm not hearing any concerns. Is that correct? Okay. The next item has to do with the board member. So the 1953 lease allows the town council to appoint one of its members or a designated representative who is a Garrett Park resident to serve on the board of directors of the pool association. The pool association is asking that provision be stricken, and what would be substituted is that the town would have the right to appoint an ex officio non-voting member of the Board of Directors to serve as a liaison between the town and the board.
I think that makes sense.
Was this ever
That's-
enforced? I mean, I know we have a esteemed colleague on the full board, but you weren't appointed.
Well, you're talking about me, so you can't possibly be referring to an esteemed colleague, but yes.
But I mean, has
But that was
has-
before,
It was random.
yeah, it was.
Right.
But Phil is the liaison from the council.
Phil Norman.
No, me.
No, Phil. Oh, from the council.
Yes.
Yeah.
Keep it all in.
Yeah,
family.
recent years, having a liaison has been the model, and that's our model with the other
Yeah.
committees.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Okay, so it sounds like everyone's okay with that proposal. The Pool Association brought this to my attention, which was a very kind of odd provision. So the 1953 lease, the current lease, states that the roadway on which the property abuts will be kept passable and in reasonable repair by the association at its own expense. So we're talking about Cambria. My understanding, and obviously probably no one is more knowledgeable than Councilmember Schulp on this issue, is that probably in 1953 that Cambria Avenue was possibly not fully developed and that there might have been minimal houses, if any, beyond the pool location. Certainly, there's no doubt that Cambria Avenue is a town of Garrett Park Street and that we are responsible for maintaining it. So I don't think there should be any dispute about making this update, but just wanted to bring it to your attention and see if anyone's
I
throwing.
mean, my house and the surrounding houses weren't built until the early to mid 60s. And I think there was only 3 houses there.
Yeah, so this just seems to be a housekeeping thing to update, sort of to reflect current conditions. The last item, and once again, this isn't a non-exhaustive list, but I think it gives us a really good idea of kind of, starting to flesh out the terms of the new lease. So the 1953 lease includes a provision that the pool association has the option to purchase all or part of the property, quote, at the price then prevailing for equivalent unimproved lots in Garrett Park, just by way of kind of development speak. Typically, when you talk about unimproved land, you're talking about land that lacks basic utilities. So it's inherently therefore more expensive to develop. Obviously, there are now utilities in the area, and we have probably very few unimproved lots in Garrett Park that the town itself doesn't own as open space. So we had some, Donna and the mayor and I had some discussion about this. What we've discussed is kind of taking out that existing language, including a provision, a right of first refusal provision in the new lease, with no reference to a specific property valuation methodology. I think we all probably recognize that the likelihood that the town is ever going to sell this property is probably very, very minimal. But it would just probably update the language to at least make it a right of first refusal, that if we were to sell it, we would give the pool association the first crack at buying it.
So the market will just determine the value?
It would be, I think what we've discussed is that it would be determined by the town council, sitting there at that time. As, Donna and I kind of talked about, when you talk about kind of selling something at unimproved land value, obviously the pool association has a very long history in town and is providing a great amenity for everyone. The town council at that time would have to kind of juxtapose that against your fiduciary responsibility to try to maximize what you get from the sale of town assets. Like I said, I think this is somewhat a theoretical argument in all likelihood, which is why I think we kind of agreed that there's not much point in trying to hammer out a methodology right now.
Right. Yeah.
I would suggest we don't, because if for some crazy reason this had to occur,
Yeah.
there may be circumstances you don't want to get yourself locked in.
Right. So,
But I do have another question on the thing before that. Maintenance Cambria Avenue, should we include the parking lot as being town property, or is?
yeah, it's interesting because I was, and Donna, you might have some history that I don't, or the mayor certainly, or Mr. Councilmember Schulp. There were actually some records at one time that when the parking lot was done, that the pool association made like payments to the town over a period of time. So that kind of suggests there was at least a thought at one point that the parking lot was the pool association's responsibility, but I don't know, and I don't truly have an opinion on it. That's up to you all. Donna, do you recall, or your council, what the lease says currently about that
There's a
parcel?
rider to the original lease that reflects the use of the parking area.
Yeah, I know there's a provision that talks about kind of
I
exclusive
don't
use.
remember anything about payments on this.
Yeah, it was weird. I think it was something that came up in Claire's research.
Mm. So maybe one of those.
One of these
Mystery town
rules of
council
engagement
conversation.
kind of things, but I think that's up to you all if you want to include that and have that as a.
Lease for the Garrett Park Pool Association should include the parking lot is what the.
It does.
I think it
There-
includes
there
the
is in the
leasing
term
to-
sheet.
yeah,
You put
to the-
together. there
Right,
is-
I think it
there is
includes that
a-
parcel and
Yeah.
the use of
And the
that lot
date.
during,
Right.
what is it, Donna, like
Mid-
Memorial Day to Labor Day, basically.
Yeah,
Provide
2
for
weeks before.
exclusive use.
So is the question the maintenance of it?
Well, that's what I
I
was
think
thinking.
That's what Phil was raising.
No, that's what I was thinking is because if we make it, if we designate it that it's a town street, then it means the town's responsible for fixing it. And then that way, the pool association doesn't have to worry about an argument later on as to who's responsible for fixing it.
For repaving the parking lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's up to you all. Like I say, the purpose of tonight's discussion is just to get some guidance. So if that's an issue you want us to address in the new lease, we certainly can.
Well, I would, well, see if anybody else does.
I'd be okay with that.
I'm sorry, Jerry.
Now, exempt, saying the pool's not responsible.
That the town would take responsibility.
Right.
Sorry, I just didn't hear you initially.
Thanks.
So I'm sorry. Could you go to the mic, please? Sorry.
Is there any way we can get some more parking?
I will note that just in the pool's special exception, it references the parking lot being town owned and operated.
Oh, thank you.
For the historical.
Oh, that's helpful. No, that is.
Then it's our.
Okay.
Okay.
So like I say, there are some issues such as liability and some insurance requirements and, possibly one or two other issues, but, thank you for your guidance tonight. I think this will be very helpful in terms of our moving forward.
Mention one thing, and I don't want to open a can of worms or even litigate it here, but because I think it's actually a special exemption issue, but I would want to make sure the lease wouldn't bound us in any way to a set boundary for the next 20, 30, 40, or 50 years. Is that?
Boundary of what?
Well, if in 20 years, there's some discussion around changing the boundary of the area that 10
Yeah.
years midway through a lease.
Yeah, if I may, obviously leases are legal documents, so the parcels that comprise the property that is the subject of the lease have to be clearly defined. I would suggest if there is some change in those boundaries, then that should be a formal lease amendment. I mean, I think it would be helpful not to have, that's not a rules of engagement issue. And that's
Be a negotiation.
correct. And the town council has to approve leases. So I would just deal with that at the time.
We're gonna lease the land to
Right.
the Garrett Parks,
Right.
and that's all of the parking lot and the pool and the.
Right.
Yeah,
Not
not the parking. That's ours.
including it, though. We're including the use of it, right?
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chris, the lease is structured and references, and so does the exemption, specific plats.
Right.
Right.
Right,
Correct.
and so, and we have those.
And
I
that's
have
what the lease is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So unless there's any other comments or questions, Mayor Keller, I think we're done with this agenda item.
I have
Okay.
one. Speaking of the special exception, I would have it a term of the lease that the pool board, that the association is obliged to give notice to the town of 45 days of any intent to seek an amendment or other change to the special exception before the Board of Appeals. And we don't have to negotiate it here. I'm just
Is
telling
the
you, I
special
want it.
exemption granted to the town or to the pool?
No, it's
To the pool.
granted to the pool. And as a practical matter, I think we would hear about it. And we might even be
Mhm.
notified of it after the filing by the county. But I just want to make clear that major changes to the use of the property over which the town would have no control, but the county would, we just want notice of.
Some-
Just to give some examples for those of you who haven't had the joy of reading the document. It has it has quite a number of special limitations, if you will. Like the decibels of the sound in the evening. The time by which the sound has to be lower than a certain decibel level. The dates when the the property can be used. So for instance, when I joked at the beginning about some members and some board members think it would be great to have access to the facility whenever the weather's good.
Yeah.
That would require us to go back to the county and re-litigate this, which would also provide the opportunity for any resident or anyone anywhere who has an issue with anything related to the pool to insert themselves into that process. So as I have said to the board, my board, that will be a different president. That will not be me.
Yeah.
But it isn't inconceivable to me that at some point, as your committee considers the parks and different leadership takes over the pool, that to your point, there might be other ways to configure things. And so I think, I mean, I don't want to negotiate in real time, but I think your suggestion, Chris, seems totally reasonable.
Does a special exemption does it have an expired date? Sorry, not.
No, it doesn't, it's just modification would require petitioning the
Yeah.
county. And then there would be a process where it'd be an open hearing for
Yeah.
anyone to raise any issues.
Just some looming date at which it has to be.
No.
And as a practical matter, I doubt that that would ever sneak up on the town, especially if our liaison is attending board meetings. I
Right.
just want it in the lease anyway. Okay, any other elements?
Is there anything else that the Garrett Park Pool Association wants the board to consider in the lease that we haven't discussed?
Yes.
I was just gonna say that this has been a process of negotiation.
Right.
I mean, there are members of the pool board who feel that we have given too much in these discussions. And specifically the idea that the landlord is asking us to pay for a lot of the maintenance of the property feels counterintuitive. And at the same time, we're acknowledging that the rent we're paying is
Really
Okay.
low,
is
right?
okay.
Right.
We understand that. So I think, we're trying to balance those
Right.
things. There is some language, I think Barb included in her memo related to like infrastructure and storm drain management and these sorts of things. And I just would call out, for instance, that the project that the mayor is leading related to the historic wall, that would clearly fall to things like that would clearly
Yeah.
fall to the town. And we will perfect that language in the final lease, but we sort of talked through the instances.
Yeah, and I might just,
Yeah.
say there is a sensitivity to the whole issue of how stormwater drainage is handled in Garrett Park. That is one of the issues raised by the Pool Association, and I think I would just simply say you all should consider that in the broader context of the discussions with the county. And I would
Right.
suggest if you want to talk about that any further, that be in closed session with legal counsel.
Okay. Barb, do we have enough on that subject?
Yes,
All right.
thank you all very much. That's very helpful.
The next item is the one I asked to be added. In the last meeting, we considered in the context of a nominal appeal, a driveway permit and reached a compromise that was unique to the facts of that situation. We also felt that we needed to discuss the broader policy issues that had been raised in the context of that undertaking, namely requirements for paving to the extent of the town right-of-way. That issue had, at least in my experience, never arisen before. And of course, it has now come up again 1 month later. And what I propose, and this is just going to be a procedural discussion, how we handle this from standpoint of processing the application for driveway resurfacing, really, at 10913 Kenilworth. After the start of this meeting, I received an email from the owner there who confirmed that Thursday of this week is the drop dead date for installing an asphalt driveway at that location. What I'm proposing is that we have a sense of the council, consensus sense of the council, that the mayor will make a determination with respect to this individual application with 2 caveats. And one of them is that we will commit to undertaking a discussion and, to the extent we can, a decision on the policy issue of requiring concrete paving between the apron or sidewalk and the border of the town right-of-way at the next council meeting. The other caveat is that I will structure this in such a fashion to provide the least broad precedent for purposes of going forward when we do discuss that policy. I think the circumstances of last month's application were such that there's no question that it does not provide a precedent of any significance. And I'll try to structure this, if the determination is made to grant the application, with enough factual detail to minimize the potential of its being a precedent that binds us in the future. So with that, I will simply ask whether I have, well, first, if the staff is otherwise minded and wants to speak to this issue.
No, I think just as I shared with Mayor Keller, I think it's unclear at this point, based on your discussion at the last meeting, what is the standard that the town is going to apply to driveway applications. So that's why the matter was referred to Mayor Keller.
There's also some indication that the applicant in this case may have been misinformed about the order in which they need to apply for various permits. So they undertook the application for the historic area work permit, since they are within the county designated historic district, first, a notoriously longer process, and now find themselves faced with this deadline of the closure of the asphalt plant. So unless somebody has any observation or objection.
I'll just make an observation that I'm glad that we would put this on our agenda for next month to consider our policy, because I'd like to see us have a conversation that might give us an opportunity to promote less concrete in the right of way and maybe find ways to promote more permeable surfaces. I realize asphalt is not permeable, but
All right.
but concrete also just is concrete.
It's also
Agreed.
uniform. Yes, okay, so let's just put the first issue to bed. You are comfortable with my undertaking an executive decision on the administrative question of whether we issue the permit?
Yes.
I'll do that tomorrow. The next day or shortly thereafter, I will circulate a memo inviting you to suggest the factors we need to undertake and the background facts we need to make a determination on the broader policy issue. I have in mind especially finding out what the county rationale is for requiring concrete from the apron or sidewalk to the town right of way or property line, which is coextensive.
I don't understand what the advantage is of making it more than 4 feet in width.
Well, that's what I propose we find out so that we can discuss it with some factual background, and Jerry Lee is right. If the county in fact requires concrete, then 2 other programs of the county are working at cross purposes.
Right.
Because you can get a bounty for removing
Right.
impervious surface,
Right.
and you can get a subsidy for installing pervious pavers.
Right.
So where does this all shake out? I'm not saying one is wrong or one is right. We just need to know. And I will suggest a few factors of that nature, and then I want everyone else to chime in relatively quickly so we can get this information before the first week of January.
Sounds
Okay,
good.
Great.
all right. Then we move to town updates. And we're only 5 minutes late.
Yep.
Parks Advisory.
We'll go
Committee.
quick. Parks is cooking. They've had their second meeting. They've been poring over survey data and coming up with next steps, all with the aim of providing the council with some recommendations. As part of that process, they aim to have those recommendations come with town resident input. So they're planning 2 events, sort of listening sessions, town meeting, in January, or January, February, depending on the scheduling. They will be, as in accordance with the survey data, prioritizing Cambria Court and Dog Park as a space, where they want to get input and conversation, as well as some of the other improvement items that were in the survey, like where people think more benches should go and other things like that. So they are off and running, and looking forward to continuing to work with them.
Archives Committee, Phil.
Basically, we don't have a meeting this month, and we are working on trying to have regular Bugle articles with a rotating author amongst the committee members to do something short with either facts, fun facts about what, the town, or some history about the town, things like that. So only a couple, 3 paragraphs long, but emphasize some of our history and what might be in the archives.
Community Relations, John.
The pressure has never been higher. 4 minutes to go. No, so I'll just go through these last 2 community relations. Just in response to Steve Walker on the Citizens Association and his public comments, we obviously as council members, we take them very seriously. I think that we acknowledge and agree that kind of making sure that there is a fluid and open relationship between the CA and the staff, and obviously including us as council members, is incredibly important. And to that end, Councilmember Deutsch and I are meeting on Wednesday with the staff, just to kind of talk through, have an open kind of discussion and make sure that we're addressing that. I think that the staff is so incredibly important to what we do. They make us look good. It's just, it really is critical in all the work that we do. The Citizens Association, on the same side, is really important, and their contributions as volunteers is just really paramount to having our community and our town function the way that we want it. So we take the comments very seriously. We are currently addressing those, and we'll be able to revert back with some more specificity around that shortly. The second update is on the boundary study, which I feel like we've been talking about this for years, but it hasn't been that long. There is a new survey to fill out based on the new options that we have, A through G. There are seven options. The majority of those options have the entire community, including the estates, all together and going to WJ or Woodward. So I would encourage everyone to take a look at the new survey. We've already taken one, but there's a new survey that's out. And that is open again until early January. I will point out that there is only one option where there is full non-split articulation from the elementary school all the way through high school, and that's option F. But please, encourage everyone to take a look at that, and that's the update on the boundary study.
There's no split at Stratford Ave and the new options.
Correct.
So they kept A through D, but they just added, but like they improved them, but they kept.
So option
still
B,
options.
option B is the old option B. And then, right, so there's a
The
couple
new
of
option
the,
B is E.
yeah, it's even more interesting than that, but there were 4 options. Those options were kept and they expanded it to
Got it.
3. Those new options have the full community together and going to either Woodward or WJ per the WJ cluster.
And do we know when that survey closes and what any deadline might be for council action with a letter or?
Yeah, the survey closes first week of January. I think it's the 3rd or the 4th. And as far as our action, I think that, we're going to submit a letter now that we've got the options, but Mayor, you can speak to that.
Don't know. We've already thanked Julie Yang,
Right.
the president of the Board of Education, for sort of going the extra mile in terms of just trying to understand what we were asking for.
Yeah.
And what we've asked for is reflected. So.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but a follow-up letter to the Board of Education, I'll really leave up to you to
Okay.
make a recommendation on that.
But I think the timing is now. We were waiting for these options to drop, and they now have. And
With a
so
very short window, shorter than the previous one.
we have a very short window, and a kind of a month. That's, we've got all sorts of holidays and everything else.
And this would kick it in 2027.
Yeah, it's the fall of 27 is when that would fully kick in.
I mean, from the beginning, we took the position of we weren't going to wade into one high school or the other. We were going to
Right.
urge the town and greater community be kept together. And if that's the case in these options, I wonder if there is any statement to make other than gratitude.
Thank you.
For being
Yeah.
I suspect once we go to the next layer, people are not all
There are
blind as they might be on just keeping.
Sure. And there are
Yeah.
there are nuances, between the 7 options, but you're right. Thanks.
Anything further?
I would just say, as the last council meeting of the year, thank you to everyone particularly for welcoming us new folks. It's been a tremendous learning experience, and from the staff to all of you, it's been really fun. So
We're
thank
happy
you.
to have you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes, definitely.
So everyone have a good holiday, and we will meet next year.
Okay.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.